John Ford, Mythmaker of the 20th Century. A presentation by Greg White. American filmmaker John Ford was born John Martin Feeney on February 1, 1894 in Cape Elizabeth, Maine. His parents were Irish immigrants and came to the United States in 1872. His father worked odd jobs to support his family, which included 11 total children. At the age of 20, Ford traveled to California and began acting before taking over behind the camera as a director. His directorial debut, Straight Shooting, was released in 1917, and he worked continuously through the end of the silent era into the age of the talkies, when he really came into his own as a filmmaker. Ford quickly gained a reputation for efficiency and an artistic flair that blended with broad commercial appeal. He made films that the masses enjoyed, but also contained depths often unseen in the cinema of the age. He also spent time working with the U.S. military during World War II as both a documentarian and a propagandist. Over the course of his career, he directed 140 feature films and is the only four-time winner of the Best Director Oscar. As one of the medium's primary myth makers, Ford himself is in many ways a myth. He was an eccentric and intense individual who was one of the first American filmmakers to elevate the medium as an art form, utilizing popular genre pictures to explore elemental thematic truths about the American experience. His films have made a lasting impression on our collective understanding of the American myth, but he also uses films to reveal aspects of American life that are both timeless and powerful. Even though he was known for his conservative politics, his films are often imbued with liberal or progressive ideals. He, like his films, and most Americans, is multitudinous and cannot be easily defined or characterized. Each of the three films selected for focus here explore powerful truths about the American experience and show how cinema is capable of both documenting the country's story with flourishes while also explaining and propagating it. Ford's 1939 film Stagecoach is a perfect example of his empathetic lens and deft understanding of the social hierarchies our country has established. The film follows 9 individuals as they embark on a journey through Apache country. Each character has different motivations for braving the dangers of riding a stagecoach through a territory that leaves them vulnerable to violence. And it is with this conceit that Ford explores the social hierarchy of America and the harm it is capable of causing. In Processes of Prejudice, author Dominic Abrams states that there is clear evidence that we apply social stereotypes of our in-groups to ourselves, and prejudice is often fueled by a perception that an out-group holds values that are contemptible or even disgusting. Ford uses the drama of the situation as an opportunity to explore social hierarchy in America and the impact it has on the individual. The social hierarchy present in Stagecoach is established early on as Dallas, the blonde woman in the clip that you're about to see, is run out of town by a group of women who do not approve of her profession as a prostitute. She is the most powerful individual present in this hierarchy, and she has internalized this powerlessness. Henry, the Ringo Kid, invites her to sit at the table to eat. This act alone is a clear signal of his value system that he still sees her as a lady in spite of her profession, yet it also lays bare the prejudices of the other travelers.
Here you are, folks. Food's on the table. Help yourselves. You got a long ride ahead of you. You ain't drinking, Billy.
Sit down here, ma'am.
Thanks.
May I find you another place, Mrs. Mallory? It's cooler by the window.
Thank you.
So much is set up and communicated in this short scene, as we see how uncomfortable everyone is with Dallas being treated as an equal. All of this being said without a single word even being spoken. The damage of this social hierarchy, so beautifully depicted here in this scene, comes into play later as Dallas struggles with the idea of marrying the Ringo Kid. She questions whether she should accept his proposal because she does not believe she's even worthy of happiness. Ford utilizes his intimate knowledge of America and its torrid relationship with prejudice. These moments of prejudice are often small, seemingly benign ones, but they can and often do lead to something enormous. In this case, a woman who has been told that she's nothing has internalized it and is letting it dictate her future. That Ford was able to accomplish such an examination in the middle of a quote-unquote typical Western is just one great example of his storytelling abilities. My Darling Clementine is a retelling of the Wyatt Earp legend and the notorious gunfight at the OK Corral. Ford chooses to emphasize the moral good of Wyatt Earp and his deputies in the film, framing Earp's decision to tame the vicious, lawless town of Tombstone as a response to his younger brother's brutal murder. The myth of the Wild West and the pervasive idea of manifest destiny are comfortable bedfellows, as the frontier has often been depicted as a violent wasteland, either due to indigenous peoples or uncivilized cowboys seeking to lay claim to the land. The American myth of our taming the West requires a morally upstanding citizen, a man who is willing to fight for what's right, and Ford fits the bill here. Manifest destiny, the belief that Americans have the divine obligation to stretch the borders of our country from sea to shining sea, can be, and often is, interpreted as a racist, despicable concept. However, it is possible to recognize the patriotic spirit that fuels the idea of manifest destiny and see how it has been used to forge our sense of American identity without wholly internalizing its racist roots. It can also be viewed as one more foundational conceit of the American experiment, less as a literal edict from God and more as an ideal for our country to strive for. We want to believe that our country is full of good people, and we ask for stories that help us to believe it. Ford seemed to understand this desire and masterfully delivers us such a story here about good men doing good deeds. He takes this one step further and has Earp speak to his young, dead brother.
We're gonna be around here for a while. Can't tell. Maybe when we leave this country, young kids like you will be able to grow up and live safe.
Earp is not cleansing the dirt from Tombstone for himself. He's doing it for the future. In framing Earp's quest this way, Ford is relying on an archetype of the American hero, a great conqueror who is taking on the hard task of spreading security and safety for the future of our country. My Darling Clementine is Ford at his myth-making best. He plays fast and loose with the historical record. Earp never had a younger brother who was murdered to serve as a catalyst for the conflict. There was indeed no Darling Clementine for Earp to fawn over. Doc Holliday did not die at the shootout. But it's clear he's less interested in what actually happened than he is in telling a compelling, resonant story about America and its establishment of dominion in the West. He finds an angle to tell the story, and in so doing, has added something elemental to our country's myth. He has, indeed, by the end of the picture, manifested a new legend and has altered our collective belief in our country. John Ford's towering achievement, 1956's The Searchers, is one of the most influential American films ever made. All of the attributes that comprise Ford's films are on full display here, from the gorgeous Western vistas to the hackneyed attempts at humor. Yet, it is the depth of character here that resonates most strongly and captures the unbridled, multi-layered essence of the American psyche. John Wayne's Ethan Edwards is a former Confederate soldier who has returned home years after the conclusion of the Civil War. What he spent his time doing is never fully detailed, but one thing is for sure: he hasn't stopped fighting. Shortly after making his way back home to his brother's ranch, Ethan's brother, sister-in-law, and nephew are massacred by the Comanche, and his nieces are kidnapped to be taken as brides. Ethan and several others, including his 1/8 Cherokee adopted nephew, try to pick up the Comanche trail to rescue them. What follows is an epic tale of revenge, obsession, and violence, as Ethan and Martin spent the next 6 years chasing the Comanche in an effort to reclaim Ethan's niece, Debbie, as her older sister, Lucy, was found slaughtered and defiled earlier in the film. The story is an exciting one, but it's elevated by the character of Ethan at its center. Ethan is a complicated individual who seems to be unaware of just how complicated he is, opting to shut himself off from any type of introspection. He presents his vision of the world in binary terms, with those on the opposing side as subhuman and everything neatly in its place. This is perfectly shown in an early scene when he refuses to take an oath to be a Texas Ranger.
Figure a man's only good for one oath at a time. I took mine to the Confederate States of America. So did you, Sam.
This scene personifies Ethan's outward expression of the world. He is a Confederate soldier, and that is all he is. He makes no room in his mind or heart for anything else. Even though he is willing to kill for the Texas Rangers, he will not devote himself to it, as he belongs to the dead Confederacy. The scene also captures a level of depth in regards to his unexamined emotions as a loser in the Civil War. It is well past time for him to come to terms with his side having lost and to make peace with the fact that he is now an American citizen. He has returned home, but he hasn't fully given himself back to it. He maintains the spirit of a rebel that exists half in and half out of America. He is neither a traitor nor a citizen, but rather something that exists in between, and that is a perfect dramatic contradiction, since Ethan does not seem to believe in in-betweens. As the story unfolds, though, it becomes clear that Ethan is much more than a binary thinker. He hates the Comanches and believes them to be savages worth nothing less than total annihilation. Yet he speaks the language and understands their customs at a deep level. He abhors his adopted nephew Martin because he possesses Cherokee ancestry, although he decides to leave everything to him in case he dies. He promises to kill his niece since she is, in his eyes, unclean, but can't bring himself to do so, instead bringing her home. It is clear that Ethan spent the years after the Civil War working as a soldier of fortune in Mexico, a dishonorable use of his skills when he claims to have honor. Ethan Edwards is a contradiction. Ethan Edwards is, then, an American. He is an individual who is not so easily defined as one thing, even though he may wish to be. In a world that steadily pushes us to define everything in binary terms, characters like Ethan Edwards are so important for us to examine and to learn from. He is sometimes evil, he is sometimes good. He is obsessed and vicious, yet acutely intelligent and observant. We cannot define him in easy terms, and this is exactly what Ford wanted to depict in his epic. Ford desired to create a myth that could somehow marry the many multitudes of American life, and his vessel was Ethan Edwards. Critic Stuart Bryson said, "If the movie achieves epic status, it is because it says, with passionate and agonizing conviction, that the beliefs of both conservatives and liberals are equally valid. The American dream is real and true, and yet America is a country founded on violence." It is through the examination of the multi-layered character of Ethan Edwards that Ford was able to achieve this thesis. This is only a snapshot of Ford's genius. These 3 films are all worthy of deep evaluation and are prime examples of myth-making in cinema. Ford's deft ability to blend commercialism with a deeper sense of the American psyche allowed him to create enduring stories that served as crowd pleasers while also exploring the underlying elements of our country at a time when its popular myth was still being forged. Ford's true genius was his aptitude in navigating the complex elements of American life and exploring them through the prism of broadly entertaining cinema. This allowed him to not only add to the American myth, but also to explicate its more intricate elements. it remains no surprise that he is still one of the most influential filmmakers in American history. And these are the works cited for this presentation. Thank you.